Hi, Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to your Monday edition of Let's Talk Tropics. As we're down to, after today, we've just got 5 days left in the hurricane season. Still a little bit of action kind of stirring down in the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. At this point, it looks like it's going to be a broad area of low pressure that's going to be bringing some soaking rains to not just the northern islands, but also going down into portions of Central America. We could see some very, very heavy rain. So we're going to be talking about that and looking elsewhere. We're also going to look back at Hurricane Helene. Of course, Hurricane Helene, very devastating hurricane for parts of the southeastern United States and tremendous amount of flooding too. We'll talk about that and show you the lifetime loop of Helene coming up in just a little bit. Real pretty day here in Lafayette, although even though we are now in the Thanksgiving holiday week, it does not feel a whole lot like the holidays with temperatures hovering around 80 degrees. I've upped my high just a little bit up to 82 just to kind of get a little wiggle room there, as my original high was 80 degrees, but it's kind of humid out there too. So we do have a bit of a heat index running at 82 right now. South winds at 12, gusting to 23 miles per hour. We've got a front that's going to be coming in a little bit later on, and that's going to bring us a better chance for some showers. But it does look like there are a couple of isolated showers that are out in the offshore waters this time around. So I don't know if anybody's brave enough to do any boating in small craft out there with those rougher seas, but might be seeing a couple of isolated showers here and there. Looking at the skies, you can see we've got those puffy cumulus clouds. It is more of a spring to summerish like type of day with the hot and humid conditions out there, and we've got that heavy air on top of that with all the moisture in there. So again, feeling very spring-like, but we're going to see some big changes here coming up after we get past the Thanksgiving holiday. Friday is going to be quite chilly, and so will the weekend. Might even be talking about frost and freeze across parts of South Louisiana. I did want to go back though and talk a little bit about Hurricane Helene, as I've kind of been focusing on the 5 tropical systems that hit the Gulf of Mexico. We talked about Beryl, we talked about Debbie, and then we talked about Francine last week. Today we're looking at Hurricane Helene, which was a catastrophic storm that devastated the southeastern U.S. in late September. It became the deadliest Atlantic hurricane since Maria back in 2017 and the worst one to hit in quite some time, at least on comparison of Katrina back in 2005. Now, it did form as a low pressure system in the Caribbean September the 22nd, rapidly intensifying into a hurricane on the 25th. By September 26th, it had strengthened to a Category 4 storm with winds of 140 miles per hour right as it made landfall in Florida's Big Bend region. And of course, that storm, once it moved inland, causing massive flooding, record-breaking storm surges, and widespread tornadoes across the southeast. States of emergency declared in Florida as well as Georgia, with warnings extending as far inland as Atlanta. Now, Helene got kind of wrapped up there in an upper trough, and we'll let that loop go around once again. But it weakened as it moved north, but the impacts were continuing, stalling over Tennessee and kind of getting wrapped around that upper low there. And that's where we saw the tremendous flooding over parts of South and North Carolina, and then going into parts of Tennessee as well. So that is one definitely that's going to be going into the record books. Hurricane Helene from September the 24th through September the 29th of this year. And going into tomorrow, we're going to look at Milton, which was one of those bigger surprises with thinking it was going to be a little tropical depression, and woo, in nothing flat, it went into a Category 5 and be another devastating storm, unfortunately, for the state of Florida. Looking at the big picture here now as we kind of get started with the rest of our Let's Talk Tropics, you can see right in the middle of the country, we've got a bit of a cold front. That's right about there. That's going to be sliding through later on tonight, bringing a better chance for some showers, some thunderstorms. There's another one that's coming on shore here that's also going to kind of zip right across the mid-south. So that secondary front, though, that comes in later this week is the one that's going to tap into some cold Canadian air. Gulf waters are still kind of rough. We've got some 3 to 5 foot seas over the far western part of the Gulf of Mexico. Our nearshore waters are probably running 2 to 3 with 3 to 5 as you get beyond 20 nautical miles. The wind speeds are kind of strong, too, as that's feeding that cold front with that low pressure area that's going to be moving across the middle part of the country. So you can see that flow is kind of starting to turn more southerly. and that's why our temperatures came up so much here over the course of the weekend. Now, as far as Central America, we had an old front that brought us the cool and pleasant weather late last week and the early part of the weekend. That front kind of settled all the way down into the Caribbean Sea. And we were talking about this last week about sometimes you get a low pressure area that can kind of spin up on the tail end of a front, and occasionally these things can go tropical. We talk about this a lot during the month of June when we get a front that can come off into the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico, let's say. And then occasionally you get a low pressure area that will develop. And a lot of times our tropical systems during the month of June will kind of develop on the end of a front over parts of the Gulf of Mexico or even the western part of the Atlantic. Well, this is kind of the same situation, but now we're in November. The frontal boundary has made its way, rather than just making it to the Gulf Coast and, giving us a drier than average day in the summertime. This front actually made it all the way down into the Caribbean Sea. So it's festering there kind of just to the southeast of Jamaica. You see a lot of thunderstorms that have developed. There's a lot of heavy rain that's moving over parts of Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and even into parts of the eastern part of the Bahamas. Now, this is going to kind of drift its way off toward the southwest over the next couple of days. So we don't think right now that this is going to become a tropical system, but this broad area of low pressure that's right there is going to kind of drift a little bit further to the west. So areas around Central America that were hit with all of the heavy rains from the recent tropical storm Sarah might be dealing with another round of some very heavy rains. Rest of the Atlantic is relatively quiet. There's a little wave kind of moving across the western Atlantic there east of the Windward Islands. That's probably going to bring those folks some rain as we head into the weekend. So we're going to focus a little bit more here on that little issue that we have in the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. And the reason why we're going to watch this, even though it's November and it isn't that likely that we would see anything develop, is these water temperatures are very, very warm here over the southwestern Caribbean. They're still in that 29 to 30 degrees Celsius range, which is anywhere between, let's say, 84 and 86 degrees. So those waters are quite warm there, especially south and southwest of Jamaica. The tropical cyclone heat potential in this particular area is also quite high. Look at that right there. It's pretty much right at the top of the charts here. Normally what you would see probably during the months of August and September. You got two hot spots. You got one there south of Jamaica, and you got another hot spot here off the Cuban coast. I don't think any tropical development is going to be heading in this way, so I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned from Jamaica, eastern Cuba, Haiti, and then also back here towards Central America that got hit pretty hard with some of that heavy rain with Tropical Storm Sarah. The wind shear values over the Gulf of Mexico are just going to be way too high for any tropical weather to come our way. So we've got nothing to worry about. This is just something we can just watch since it is still hurricane season, but no chance of this. Even if it were to try to steer in our direction, it'll get ripped apart pretty quickly. So that's why we're looking at that lower than average wind shear there southwest of Jamaica and then going all the way down to Central America. And that's kind of the way that forecast map is going to stay over the next 5 to 7 days. We're only going to go out a week here, and this is the GFS model. And you see that broad low pressure area, and then a little bit you get more kind of what we would consider what would look like more of a tropical depression maybe there in those very, very last frames. But that actually goes into the month of December, so this would be a postseason type of storm if it were to wait that long to get its act together. It's possible, and the Euro model is also seeing more of a gathering of tropical moisture there in the far southwestern Caribbean toward Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and even off the Panamanian coast as well. So not conclusive there, and neither is the Canadian really. Just kind of has a cluster of moisture that settles there in the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea for the next 5 to 7 days. And the ICON model actually has more of a broad low pressure area that develops there over the western part of the Caribbean, maybe tightening up enough to become a tropical depression there in those last frames, which is very, very similar to what we saw with the GFS model in that earlier run there just a little bit ago. Looks like the GFS, the ICON, has more of a closed low, while the Euro and the rather Canadian is looking at more of a broad area of low pressure. But I did want to bring up the European model's probability of tropical storm formation, and you can see there's kind of a bullseye there over the southwestern part of the Caribbean with the Euro model. Maybe 30 to up to 40 or 45% that we could see something develop here in the next several days. So I'm not quite convinced that we're going to finish this season without one more tropical system. Maybe we'll get Tony before all is said and done. But at the very least, the National Hurricane Center doesn't think anything's going to happen over the next several days. And also, based on just climate, it's a lot more unlikely that we would see anything develop. But who knows? Tony might show up for Thanksgiving there in Central America and bring some heavy downpours. Hopefully, it wouldn't be too strong and we wouldn't have any exaggerated rainfalls on top of what Tropical Storm Sarah did just about a week and a half ago. Well, that's what I've got for you on this Monday. I appreciate everybody watching. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. Don't forget you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. That's mornings, middays, and afternoons. And in between all of these forecasts, you can always visit my social media pages, both on Facebook and X, and make sure you tell your friends about becoming a subscriber of Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube, like over 3,000 people have already done. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Tuesday morning. See you then.